His family looked down on him, planned to put him away, and spent his money before he was gone. What they didn't know was that the quiet truck driver had been building something for decades, and one birthday party turned their greed into regret. My friends, gather round. Tonight I want to tell you a story about a man named Walter. Not the Walter you might think you know. Not the quiet neighbor. Not the old guy in the worn flannel at the diner. This is a story about how the quiet ones, the ones we look past, often have the most to say, and sometimes they say it with actions that echo for a lifetime. This story starts in the Midwest, in a city called Indianapolis. For 42 years, Walter Bennett drove an 18-wheeler for a company named Heartland Freight Lines. 42 years of white lines stretching to the horizon. 42 years of missed birthdays, quiet Christmases at truck stops, and hauling America's goods through blizzards and desert heat so his family back home could sleep in warm beds. He was a simple man, by all outward appearances. His hands were stained with grease and diesel. His world was the cab of his Kenworth and the crackle of the CB radio. He was, in the eyes of some, just a truck driver. Walter's world was his wife Clara and their daughter Rebecca. Clara was his anchor, his home port. But Clara passed away in 2019, and after that, the compass of Walter's family life began to spin. Rebecca, his only child, had built a life far removed from the rumble of diesel engines. She was a successful real estate agent in a polished suburb called Carmel, married to a man named Kevin who worked as a mid-level manager at a large insurance firm. They had 2 children, a teenage girl named Chloe and a boy named Tyler. Somewhere along the way, a distance grew. It wasn't a sudden chasm, but a slow, steady erosion. Walter's profession, the very thing that built their comfort, became a source of vague embarrassment. Rebecca began to refer to what he did as being in transportation. Kevin would make little jokes at family dinners. "Must be nice," he'd say, "not having the stress of a real career, all those truck stops and open roads." Walter would just chew his meatloaf and swallow the words along with it. The grandchildren were the deepest cut. They used to love his stories about seeing the northern lights over Montana or the way the desert smelled after a rain. But as they grew, their eyes stayed glued to their screens. He once overheard Chloe on a video call. Her friends were boasting about their grandparents. One was a retired judge. Another had founded a tech company. "What about your grandpa?" a friend asked. Chloe's voice dropped to a mumble. "Oh, he just drives a truck. Like, for a living." The tone was like a shard of ice in Walter's heart. He saw it then. To them, he wasn't a man with a lifetime of stories. He was a blue-collar ghost, fading into the background of their privileged lives. What they never saw was the other Walter, the Walter who spent his mandatory rest periods not just sleeping, but studying. While they imagined him spending his paycheck on coffee and cheap meals, he was doing something else entirely. He was learning. The cab of his truck was his library, his office, his classroom. He saw the world changing through his windshield and decided to understand it. His first real venture was in 2003. Against the advice of a skeptical accountant, he took $15,000 from his savings and bought shares in a company called Apple. Fellow drivers thought he was crazy, a trucker buying computer stocks. But Walter had watched the world getting smaller, smarter, more connected in the palms of younger drivers. He saw the future in those little devices. He kept buying, especially when the market crashed in 2008 and everyone else ran for the hills. He added Amazon in 2010. He bought into Google in 2012. In 2015, at a truck stop in Nevada, a younger driver explained something called Bitcoin to him. Walter listened, asked questions, and then bought some. He never breathed a word of this to Rebecca. He knew exactly what she'd say, that money should go toward a bigger house for her, a fancier car, private school for the kids. So he remained, in their eyes, the simple man. They saw the diesel stains and assumed financial lack. They never wondered how he always had money for the grandchildren's extravagant birthday gifts. They never questioned how he paid off Clara's staggering medical bills without a word of complaint. They never asked how he managed to buy his modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet town called Fairview outright. The disrespect became the normal temperature of their relationship. Rebecca would call to ask for money with the cold efficiency of ordering a pizza. "Dad, I need $3,000 for Chloe's equestrian camp. You can manage that, right?" There was never a please, never a true thank you, never a thought about where it came from. Visits to Rebecca and Kevin's home in Carmel became exercises in invisibility. Kevin would give a half-hearted nod from behind his phone. At their dinner parties, Walter was strategically placed at the far end of the table, away from conversations about stock options and summer homes. The children stopped hugging him. "I'm too old for that, Grandpa," Chloe declared at 12. Walter started inventing reasons not to visit. The loneliness of the open road began to feel warmer than the loneliness in his daughter's living room. But all those miles alone teach you things. They teach you patience. They teach you to read the signs long before the exit arrives. And by late 2024, Walter began to see the signs clearly. Rebecca's calls became more frequent. They were laced with new questions. "How are you really feeling, Dad? That house must be a lot to take care of alone." She started casually mentioning assisted living facilities. "I read about this lovely place in Fishers, Dad. They have bingo and lovely gardens. You'd have people your own age to talk to." Kevin began making pointed comments about the real estate market. "Property values in Fairview are skyrocketing, Walter. You might want to sell while you're still able to make those big decisions." While you're still able. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Even the grandchildren got in on the act. During a stiff, obligatory visit, Chloe eyed the vintage watch on his wrist. It was his father's watch. A treasure. "Is that thing worth anything, Grandpa?" she asked, not with sentiment, but with appraisal. Walter could have erupted then. He could have demanded to know what they were plotting. But a lifetime of navigating black ice and reckless drivers had taught him that calm precision beats angry reactio.